And welcome to our part two of our annual QPR player ratings for 2024-2025. In this part, we'll be rating the remaining 13 players alphabetically from Michael Frey to Yang Min-Hyeok, and also rating Marti Cifuentes as well. I'm again joined by Dave and George, and I'll just clarify for anybody who missed part one. Key thing is we started on a 5 out of 10 for each player and working up or down from there. There's no half marks. Like I say, we'll be going alphabetically. Starting with Michael Frey, Dave. What did you give him out of 10?
I went with a 7 for him. I think he's had a pretty good season. Injuries haven't helped him. He's missed quite a few games. He seemed to get on a good run and he'd miss a couple of weeks, then be back and then, break up again. But he scored goals when he's played, especially at home. I think he's been really effective. He's had a good season. He doesn't look as effective away from home, but he's had a pretty good season overall. He's kind of done what you'd expect from him. You'd probably you wanted like two or three strikers to do the same, get like not 8, 9, 10 goals around that, and then you're all right. But I think he's had a good season.
Yeah, what did you give him, George?
Yeah, I completely agree. I've gone for 7 as well. At the end of the day, he's our top goal scorer. I know he didn't get into double digits, and it's another season where a striker hasn't, but he is our top goal scorer. At the end of the day, he's not fit enough as well. He needs to learn to stay fit for a course of the season, but that's been the same throughout his whole career, to be honest. But he's looked more of a threat this season. I think there was a period of time this year where I thought he looked like a proper goal scorer and he looked like a threat. I still remember that Luton away game where he absolutely bullied McGuinness for that second half. Um, but yeah, if only he could stay fit, because I feel like you could then have a striker who could score some more goals. But I agree with what Dave said as well, that he needs to learn to play a bit better away from home and score more goals away from home. But yeah, I've gone for a 7 and I think he's had a decent season.
Yeah, I went with the 7 as well. He's definitely been our best striker. He's difficult to play against, and his strike rate is good for his number of appearances. But that is the problem, isn't it? His number of appearances. He played the first 10 league games, but then never more than 7 in a row after that. You wonder how fit he can ever be based on how he plays and the way he puts himself about. But I do like him. He's a oddball, isn't he? But I actually love that about him. 7 out of 10 for me. Another striker next, Ryan Kolli. What did you give him, George?
Yeah, I've gone for 6. I think it was another really tough one to judge. I think it's his first proper season where he's been involved in the first team throughout the whole year. He always looks lively and he always looks like a threat. I always like bank on him to hit the target. And he looks like a top prospect. It's just whether we keep hold of him in the summer or not. But I still think he might be better behind the striker, to be honest with you. I don't think he is a number 9 sort of striker. And it would have been nice to see him go out on loan this season, to be honest. I know he hasn't looked out of depth in the championship, but that's kind of what I feel like we sometimes miss out on, sending players out on loan when they should. So yeah, I've gone for a 6.
Yeah, I went with the 6 as well. And my notes in front of me just say still not showing his best position. And I think I said it, Dave, on a recent show. He may be actually best in an attacking midfield role. The concern, obviously, is that his best run of appearances was 7 in a row. It's hard to give him more than a 6 because of that. At his age, I've said before, his injuries are a bit of a concern because there's no doubting he's a talent. But can he find the consistency on and off the pitch next season is the big question mark. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, 6 as well. Where there was that weird spell in the start of the season where he played the first game, didn't he? And then he was kind of left out, wasn't even on the bench, and there was all the talk about his contract and this sort of stuff. But when he come back in, he played a big part in turning the season round, getting those goals. Was it the Norwich game? He scored a couple of goals in, and he was really good during that period. Um, I agree with you about the injuries. It is a slight concern, but I mean, nearly every player we're saying this about has been injured this season, so maybe it's not a proper issue for him. It's more what the club are doing. Um, Definitely a good prospect. Like, going to just echo what you two have said about his position. I don't think he's a lone front man. I think he's struggled a bit when he's done that, especially away from home. He's looked better as like a number 10 or playing out wide. And, we've got a lot of players like that at the minute, so he's trying to fit them all in and try and find the best way for him to go.
Yeah, definitely. At least with Ryan Colley, we've protected our investment. He's got that new deal,
Mm.
so we can see where it goes from here. I'm on a run of strikers because it's Alfie Lloyd next. He was a tricky one for me, actually. I was between a 4 and a 5, plumped for a 5. Not convinced he is or ever will be championship standard. I suspect he's more likely to be like someone like the next Aramide Ote, where he comes in, does okay, scores the odd goal, but ultimately isn't probably good enough. Also seems to struggle with injuries too, probably because of how he plays. He's a bit out of control and wild at times. But I went with a 5 because he did have some good impact on some games. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, same with 5. I mean, I've enjoyed watching him in the team this season. I mean, that goal at Sheffield Wednesday, I mean, that was unbelievable. That last minute goal he scored, the tap in, but the after that scramble and his reaction to it, he just seems so enthusiastic just to play football at this level. He looks like he can't believe his luck, and he gives everything every time he plays. Like you, I think he's probably not going to end up a championship player. I think he'll probably drop down in the end, but he's had an impact this season. I think he's had a pretty good season. We've needed him a lot. He's one of the few players who's got a bit of pace, and if away from him, that did help us a bit in the middle of the season.
What did you give him, George, and what do you rate him going forward?
Yeah, I've given him a 4, and it's a bit of a stretch for me to give him a 4, to be honest, because I'm really one of his biggest critics, to be honest with you. I think, first of all, his biggest asset is his unpredictability, because he doesn't know what he's doing half of the time. So if he doesn't know what he's doing, I don't know how the opposition defenders are meant to defend him half of the time. But no, I just think he's not up to the standard, and I think he knows that maybe that he's, as Dave said, he can't believe his luck really that he's playing championship football. But you can't fault the effort that he puts in. He really does try, but I just think that he's not good enough for the championship. And I think if he's one of your striker options, that says a lot about the season that you're going to have. To be honest, I'll hold my hands up and say I didn't stay for the Sheffield Wednesday goal. I'd left by then, so I can't really bring any bias with that. But no, I think he's just. Yeah, I just think he's poor, and if he's one of your strikers going into a season, that says a lot.
Yeah, I think he just needs a loan next year, and then we can see where he progresses to. A bit like Charlie Kelman, he might be amazing in League One, League Two, and we'll have to see after that. Nicholas Madsen up next, Dave, is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, he was. I found this one quite difficult because a couple of weeks ago I'd have been quite happy with a 2 or a 3 for him because I thought he'd been abysmal. But since the Oxford game, I think he's been very good, and you kind of see a bit more of why they signed him. I ended up going with a 4 for him. I think he's got a good lot of ability. You can see he can pick a pass. He's got some assists recently, and he got the goal against Sunderland. But just for large chunks of the season, he was just anonymous. For such a big guy in midfield, he's just so easy to knock off the ball. He just disappeared in games. That he come on as a sub in the Leicester Cup game. I know it was foggy that day, but you just didn't get involved at all. He might as well not played. And yeah, I found him really disappointing this season. I hope how he's finished the season means he'll kick on next year. I think there is some hope that he could do. That has been promising, but overall, I couldn't give him more than a 4.
Yeah, I've gone with a 4 as well because we have to judge it over the whole season. And I felt sorry for him for so long. I mean, we obviously highlighted on this show, the preview shows that he was the matches where he was making no tackles, etc. By the winter, the people had no time for him anymore. He'd come on and sometimes he would do little wrong, but people were slamming him straight away. Someone else could give 5 passes away and you'd hear nothing. Madsen would do 1 pass or lose the ball once and it'd be like, you useless X, Y, and Z. Don't think his transfer fee has helped. If he was a free, I think people would have given him more time. But thankfully, the last month of the season, it has given us some hope. There is talent there. April and May, he was probably 7 or 8 out of 10. So I ended up on the 4 because the first half of the season, we have to say, he would have been lucky to get a 1 or a 2. What have you given him, George?
Yeah, I've gone 4, and I was really close to giving him a 5 just because of recency bias, to be honest with you, because I feel like the last month he's been one of our better players. He's looked exceptional, but before that, he looked so anonymous in games. That I just didn't really know what he gave you, and there was that stat obviously that he just didn't put in a tackle for what 3, 4 games, and as a midfielder, that's just a ridiculous stat. So I feel like. You're right with what you say. It's good to see that there is some potential there and there is something to build off of. I think it's another one like Seller really that it's a lot to do with confidence. I think he's coming from a foreign league, not knowing the country, to having fans turning him quite quickly because of the transfer fee. I feel that was. But I feel since he's had a bit of confidence and the fans have got off his back a little, he's looked a better player. So definitely potential going into next season. But if we're going off the whole season as a whole, I can't really give him much more than a 4.
Yeah, I think he's proved that as long as you try and you look like you're interested for QPR, the fans will get behind you. And that's what they've done now with him in the last couple of games. Sunderland, in that last match of the season, he was like one of the instances like challenging the man, shepherding it out for a goal kick. We'd seen nothing like that from him all season. He was always just wandering around. So, yeah, it's a big season ahead for him, though it still feels. Kieran Morgan up next. It's someone completely the other end of the radar. Someone who wasn't for a big fee, wasn't on anyone's squad list at the start of the season or anything, but he came in. What did you give him, George?
Yeah, perhaps a bit harsh, but I've given him a five. I think that he looked really good when he first came into the team, and that it was that game, obviously Coventry at home, where he scored, and I was really happy for him. But I think since he had a bit of a spell in the team, I think the amount of games got the better of him. I think he's looked a bit leggy, and he hasn't looked as great. Still, so he's only 18, and the fact that we've managed to pick him up from Tottenham's a really good bit of business. I thought that with our summer recruitment, he was actually one of the better ones that we picked up. So yeah, another one, good prospect going forward, but I feel like in recent games he just hasn't really given us anything. I feel like sometimes he just got a bit outmuscled in games, and he looked his age. So he's another one I wouldn't mind sending out on loan next season. Um, but yeah, a prospect.
Yeah, I think he could do with potentially a loan next season. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, I went with a six. I agree with George. It was a tough one. This I thought he started so well. It was a real breath of fresh air in the team. We were struggling at the time, and he gave us just someone who could run around and pass forward. Sounds so basic, but they didn't have anything like that at the time. And he did really well at first, and then he did drop and fade a little, which happens a lot with younger players. And I thought they did the right thing towards the end of the season, just take him out the firing line. Give him a breakout. Keep him involved, coming off the bench occasionally, but not really starting games, and then go again next season. I agree. I think he probably could do with a loan spell. He's still very young. He needs to play regular football, really. But he's had a good season though.
Yeah, I went with the six as well because considering none of us knew anything about him 9 months ago, it's been an impressive start to his career overall. He's put himself on the radar. He did really tail off from about March onwards. Middlesbrough away in particular sticks in my head where the whole game just bypassed him. And like you are right, Dave, a lot of what he brought to the team was pretty basic, but he worked hard, fought for the shirt, and ended up on a six for me. Liam Morrison next, I've given a seven. I love how he plays, so calm and assured. Issue, again, as it is with so many of our players, was how few games he played, only 21 appearances. But he had that run, obviously, with 13 starts in a row without defeat was impressive. And as he looked fitter towards the end of the season, you're thinking he's going to be undroppable if he can stay fit, and we could have a real asset on our hands. So yeah, seven for me. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, same seven for me. He looks a real prospect to me. He settled in really well, especially alongside Cook earlier in the season. I thought they formed a really good partnership. Really like the look of him. He's had a few dodgy games recently, but nothing too bad. I think he's had a good season overall, so I went with a seven, and I think he can really kick on next year.
Is it a full house, George?
Yeah, it is. I've gone for seven as well, and the fact he went 13 games undefeated. It's just really good for someone who's only 21 as well. He doesn't seem as young as he actually is, but he's a really good player, and a bit like Edwards. Really, he's so assured on the ball. He doesn't look like he hasn't played Championship football before. I know that he was on loan last season at Wigan in League One, but even as we've said so many times, the difference between League One and Championship is massive. So he's someone who I'm definitely really excited about next season, and hopefully he can play more often and become one of the starters.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make there. He plays like he's 27, 28, 29. You wouldn't think he was at a place if he was that age. Yeah, really good one for him this season. Paul Nardi, Dave, what have you given him?
I went with an eight. I think he's had a really good season, probably been one of our best signings. If you think back a year ago when we had Begovic in goal, if the ball come to his feet, everyone was, holding their breath. What on earth's going to happen here? It's completely opposite with Nardi. He looks comfortable on the ball. You know, he's made some really good saves throughout the season. Can be a bit dodgy on crosses. I think he needs to come off his line a bit more, but no one's perfect. I think overall he's had a really good season. Was a candidate for Player of the Year, and you know he's what we said before about who could go. He could be someone that teams look at to try and buy this summer. I think he's had a really good first season over here.
What did you give Paul Nardi, George?
Yeah, I've gone for an eight as well, and I think he's just such a massive improvement on Begovic. I think in terms of the way that Marti plays, he suits it more. He looks comfortable on the ball. I remember that pre-season friendly. I think it was Tottenham in the pre-season friendly. He just was pinging balls all over the place, and he just looked really comfortable. He's a brilliant shot stopper. I feel like some of the saves he made this season have really kept us in games, particularly at the start of the year. But I feel like he does need to work on potentially being a bit more dominant when the ball comes into the box. There's been a couple of goals this year where I thought, oh, he should have come out and claimed that. One being Bristol City, not Bristol City, Sheffield United at home when they put that cross in for the first goal. I feel like a championship keeper and a keeper at this standard should come out and claim them. So he's not perfect, but he's a massive improvement on Begovic, and he's in my top three players of the season. So yeah, 8.
Yeah, I only went with a 7, mainly because I think I'd given Jimmy Dunn and Ronnie Edwards an 8, so I was thinking it wasn't quite on their level. But the key thing is, and it's good that you mentioned that Tottenham game, is the defenders and the fans all seem to have confidence in him, and that he came in and from that first moment, everyone thought, oh, he's a good goalkeeper, and we were relaxed about him. Can't recall any goals that were like shots he should have saved. Maybe fair enough, I agree both. Yeah, he should have come for a few crosses, but we had Begovic last year where he was dropping a few, some were going right through him. We didn't see that, so he was an improvement. And I'm now feeling slightly harsh. So I've given him a 7, but I'm going to stick with it. Kenneth Paal, George, what have you given him?
Yeah, I've gone for 6. I feel like he's been solid. I feel like throughout the whole season, his head's almost looked elsewhere, particularly in the second half, and he almost went into preventative mode where he wasn't trying to get himself injured, and obviously he didn't play against Sunderland, but he still looked a solid option at this level. I think his time's passed at QPR now, and it won't be a shame to see him move on. I feel like he's done well. He's done well for the club. I feel like his best points were when Bill was in charge, when he initially joined. But yeah, it's still a solid option at this level, but he just does some stupid things sometimes. So
Yeah, I've only gone with a 5 for Kenneth Paal. I've always said he's kind of steady at best anyway, but this season, we highlighted it on the preview shows, Dave. He conceded a goal down his side so often, especially in the second half of the season. Kept letting wingers just go past him. Often, literally, he could pull him down and take a yellow card, and but he was just letting them breeze past him. We have to improve at left back, and we need to reset, I think, and get somebody new in there. So I've only given him a 5. What have you given him?
Yeah, same. I went with a 5. I don't think we helped ourselves with him trying to get rid of him all for most of last summer and then saying, oh, actually, we couldn't get rid of him. Couldn't you be our first choice left back for the season? Of course, his head's elsewhere. But I agree. We have let in a lot of goals down his side this season. I don't think he's helped that our wide players don't defend much, and he's left 2-on-1 a lot. But he could do a lot better. He's probably the weakest of his 3 seasons this year. But he's one who's normally available to play, which is handy at QPR. We don't always have that, and he's been a good player for us over the 3 years. But it's probably time to move on now.
Yeah, knowing QPR, I'll probably regret saying all this when we bring in our new left back who's useless. But yeah,
Yeah.
it does feel like it's the right time to move on. Koki Saito's next, and I've given him a 7. Really like him, like his attitude, always gives 100%, and he's an exciting player to watch. What type of player you want to see in the team sheet? So you're going to see them that afternoon. Feels like a QPR player to me, whatever that even means, but it makes sense to me. Really hope he stays. Offers something different, doesn't he? Could be a real fan favourite if he's here next season. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, same as 7. I thought he got a lot better as the season wore on. He was quite exciting, and he was just starting to add a bit of an end product to his game. He was scored a couple of goals, was creating a lot more chances, and then he got his red card against Leeds, and then his injury. So he's kind of missed the last month and a bit of the season, which is a real shame. I say very skilled, really good on the ball. I like the way he takes players on. He's good to watch. So yeah, I think he's had a good season.
Any different, George?
no, I've gone for a 7 as well. I feel like he's such a good creative player in terms of taking people on one-on-one, particularly at the byline as well. He absolutely loves it. You had that goal away at Hull, which was in my top 3 for goal of the season. Actually, to be honest with you, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I thought when he first came in, he looked a bit weak for the level, but then I feel like he's adapted as it's gone on. And yeah, it'd be really nice to keep him on because, as James said, who knows what it means, but he does scream QPR, doesn't he? And yeah, it'd be good to keep him because I really couldn't see him play for another championship club, to be honest. I feel like it'd be a bit like the Ronnie Edwards situation where I'd be a bit upset seeing that. So
No, I agree with that, actually. If he joins another championship club, it will sting a bit. The next player is Everton Santos. He makes the cut because he was obviously here the first half of the season and did make enough appearances to get a rating. What have you given him, Dave?
I went with 3. Unfortunately, he was probably the weakest one of the lot. I don't know what they were thinking of signing him. And if they, I know they've got that deal where they can make the loan permanent for 2 million. If they get 2 million for him, bloody hell! I mean, they should build a statue for Nuri if he pulls that one off. I mean, yeah, just really poor. He played right back, left back. Didn't seem to know how to play either position. Was always seemed to be asking for help all the time. Jimmy Dunn was walking him through games a lot. Oh, yeah, not great, really.
Yeah. What have you given him, George?
Yeah, I've gone for 3 only because he scored in that cup game, to be honest. I could have easily given him a 2. That Middlesbrough at home game, he got absolutely torn to shreds by Ben Doak in that first half, and I knew it was a disaster waiting to happen when he got put in at left back. But he just offered absolutely nothing, and I feel like every single time the winger just were licking their lips, really running at him. To be honest, it was just so he just didn't look championship level. And as Dave said, if we somehow managed to get 2 million from them, yeah, wow.
Yeah, that might be the one transfer where the club don't make it an undisclosed fee. They'll be happy to tell
Yeah.
us that one. Yeah, we have to be honest. I've given him a 3 as well. He was just miles off it, wasn't he? Certainly not a right back. And he's my lowest mark as well because without doubt the poorest player I saw play for QPR this season. Played 6 league games. We never won any of them. So it's hard to rate him anything other than a 3. This one might be a little bit higher though. Paul Smyth, what have you given him, George?
Yeah, I've gone for 6. I feel like there's some parts of his game that are really good, and he went for a spell of the season where he did really well. He actually took people on 1-on-1. He cut inside, had some more shots, but at the end of the day, 1 goal a season isn't good enough as a winger, in my opinion. But he works hard. He really does work hard, and you can tell that he loves the club. And I feel like he's our only option with pace, to be honest with you. And you can really tell when he's out of the team because we just looked so stationary and just not enough pace in the team. So yeah, I've gone for a 6, and mainly because he works hard. And yeah, I don't think he'll ever be a decent championship player. I think he's average, but you can see why he does well in League One.
Yeah, I went with a 7. I think some of that is this season because we're talking about so many injured players. It's his availability. He'd played in 65 consecutive games before his end of season suspension. And I feel like it was his most consistent season. I know maybe not with end product, but in terms of his actual performances, he's always been a good option for us, especially off the bench. He's the only player in the team who's like got real pace and scarce fullbacks. We know his end product is lacking, but if it wasn't, he probably wouldn't be at QPR. I still feel like he's a valuable member of the squad, and he had his best season for me at QPR. So that's why I gave him a 7. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, same as 7. I agree with you. It probably was his best season for us. Just one of the things he gives you is so basic, but he just gets us up the pitch with a bit of pace, wins free kicks and corners where you can create chances from. So I think he's done well in that regard. Defensively, he's been very good as well. He's really helped us. I think the team have been better with him in it. But like George said, you need more goals and assists from your wingers, really, especially going forward. And for me, as much I really like Smith and I love what he gives us, but if he's your first choice right winger in the Championship, that's why you're not going to finish much higher than 15th. He needs to be your backup winger, really, coming off the bench, playing the odd game with someone ahead of him. And the fact that he's still first choice at this stage is a little concerning. I think that's something they have to look at in the summer.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting to see where he starts next season. Like you say, if he's still in the team, suggests recruitment maybe hasn't gone to plan. Jonathan Varane up next. I've given him a 7 as well. He was a bit hit and miss as he adapted to English football. But for me, as I've spoke about in the end of season review, he's our most sellable asset in my eyes. He's doing that job that, to me, all teams look for, that's sitting in front of the defence, but able to bring the ball forward with his feet. My feeling is he's QPR's most sellable player in terms of other teams are going to look at him. But his challenge for next season is to find consistency because he has been up and down even towards the end of the season. He had some matches where you're like, what's he doing? The next match, he'd be absolutely superb. Hopefully, he can kick on from here. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, I went with a 7 as well. There's a lot of potential there. Like they say, he struggled the first half of the season, or the first 2 months of the season, until he got that red card against Blackburn. I don't think he was helped that Colback was missing a lot. I think he kind of needed to be eased in a little bit more. He was kind of thrust into it and had to play every week. But as the season's gone on, he's got a lot better. He's a key player for us now. He's one of the first names on the team sheet. He's starting to get a little bit better going forward. He didn't really have that in his game the first half of the season, but he's driving forward a bit more now. Looks a bit of a threat. So yeah, I think expecting a lot to come of him next season, but I went with a 7.
Yeah, I think it's the best compliment you can play him actually is that the first game of next season, you'd be surprised if his name wasn't on the team sheet, wouldn't you?
Mm.
So he's done well. What did you give him, George?
Yeah, I've gone for an 8. I feel like I agree. He started off the season poor. I feel like there was expectation on him as well, mainly maybe because of his surname, Varane. Obviously, it's a well known in the football world, but I feel like that Blackburn red card was probably the best thing that could happen to him because it gave him that opportunity to come out of the side, analyse what he could do better, and ever since he's been our best midfielder. He's a superb tackler of the ball. And he's also technically very good as well. So you almost get both best of both worlds. And I think next season, if he can consistently play for us, he's really, really a sellable asset.
Definitely, yeah, he will be. He could go for quite a big fee if he can continue on his trajectory. Hopefully, that's what the club need him to do. Final player, Yang Min-Hyeok on loan from Tottenham. What did you give him, Dave?
I went with a 5. I thought he'd done okay. Obviously, very young and new to English football, and he struggled. I thought to find his best position. I thought I think he initially come in as a winger, but I thought he looked better up front. To be honest, when he did play up front, I thought he offered a bit of a threat there. I think he's got a lot of ability, a lot of potential, but just didn't show it often enough. And another one we've got defensively who was poor and needs to learn that side of the game. But I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up coming back on loan again in the future.
What did you give him, George?
Yeah, I agree. I've gone for a 5. I think he started off poor. He didn't look like he'd played English football before, and because he hadn't, and he looked his age a bit. Unlike Morrison, who you can say, oh yeah, he looks much more mature. He did look 18. But you can definitely tell that there's a good player in there. You really can, and you can see he's got good finishing. He's quick. I agree with Dave. I think he's more of a striker, or at least he looked more of a striker for us because out on the wing he just kind of got isolated out of games. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be against if we could bring him back on loan next season for another year because I feel like he would have benefited off these 6 months. But yeah, you can't really give him much more than a 5 because he didn't really do too much.
Yeah, full house. I've given him a 5 as well because again, it's inconsistency was the key word with him. He'd do really well, but then would be totally anonymous the next game. Could be because he did have to play left wing, right wing, up front. It was that period when we had no striker, but I suppose that's why he's on loan at QPR to kind of find where he wants to be going forward. I wouldn't be adverse to having him here again next season either because you see the quality of his goals at Stoke and Oxford. He has the potential. It's there. But him not being on the bench for the last game maybe suggests that won't happen. But we'll see what happens over the summer. Unusually for QPR, we've only got one manager to rate, but only just we just got in there. We won't rate Kevin Betsy and Xavi Khan for the last game of the season. But Marti Cifuentes, we all gave him a 10 out of 10 last season for the way he saved us from relegation. Probably a little bit harder to rate this season. What did you give him, Dave?
Yeah, Leicestershire, I went down to an 8 this year. I think he has done well this year. There has been times where he's frustrated a little bit. It's frustrated me a little bit with his team selection, some of the subs he makes. But like we said before, that is something that all managers do, really. I think when you look at the injuries we've had, the squad we've had, that forward line of Alfie Lloyd, Frey, Kolli, and Seller, there's not a lot of goals in that. And to keep that squad up, with that in and a real lack of pace throughout the squad to keep him up reasonably comfortably. And to be honest, only 1 or 2 results away from being in the top half, to be honest. We weren't miles away. I think that's a pretty good effort, and I think he's done a good job again.
Yeah, I went with an 8 as well. He did his job for me. As we've spoken about, rarely able to name his best 11. It's been quite clear in these player ratings, as we've alluded to how many injuries we've had. We didn't finish far off what most of us predicted. Like, you just didn't even finish far off the top half. For our budget, where we are statistically, 15th is kind of what QPR are right now. So it's certainly not been a failure. Could we have done better in some matches? Of course. We've still had long periods of inconsistency. But overall, I was happy. And as I've said a few times, he made me confident that he'd keep QPR progressing if he was in charge. Did you have an 8 as well, George, or are you higher or lower?
Yeah, no, I've gone for 8 as well. Yeah, as you just said, I always have faith in Marty, and I still do. I know he's left, but I would have loved to see him stay at the club for a bit longer because I feel like one as a championship club, having longevity as a manager is so important. You never see it nowadays in terms of loyalty. And I see people on social media comparing Marty to Bill. I don't at all, to be honest with you. I feel like who knows what's gone on behind the scenes, and if moving progresses his career in a positive way, then good for him. This season he's been dealt a really bad hand in so many games with injuries and just player recruitment, and I think he's done really well with that. The fans kept him in his job at Stoke at home, I think. To be honest with you, I think if we lost that game, he would have been gone. But I'm really glad he did stay because I feel like getting rid of him at that point would have been really, really the worst decision to make. And I would have loved to see him stay, but it is a shame. It is a shame, but yeah, I think at eight's a fair judgment, and not many managers would have been able to keep this side up this season. I don't think with the injuries that they had and with how light we went into the season. So.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is fair. And I don't think any of us would have seen this coming. You think back to even as recently as January when we had that week when we beat Plymouth and Hull away from home. You wouldn't have predicted we'd end the season with Marti Cifuentes on gardening leave. But that's it from us. Let us know your ratings. Don't take what we've all said too seriously. It's all just fun. And we'll have some more podcasts coming throughout the summer. The three of us will be back soon, ranking our best and worst QPR kits. And Dave and I are going to try and do a show forming the best QPR 11 from our decade stuck in the Championship. So there's plenty of content to keep you occupied throughout the summer. Until next time, thanks for watching and come on yours as always.